What happened when a talk show host pushed Michelle Obama too far? In her personal life, then the answer shocked all the audience there. Subscribe Storyboat, because tomorrow we have another story for you. Also write down in comment section, where are you watching from? Let's move on to Story. The audience buzzed with excitement as the camera panned across the packed studio. Alex Brooks, the sharp-tongued host of one of the most popular talk shows in Los Angeles, sat confidently in his chair. Known for his tough questions and biting political humor, Alex had built a reputation as someone who could grill anyone on live television. "Tonight," Alex said, his grin mischievous under the bright studio lights, "we have a very special guest. Someone you'd never guess would step onto this stage." The crowd murmured in confusion. Who could it be? The energy in the room shifted as everyone leaned forward in anticipation. The curtains parted, and Michelle Obama walked out, dressed in a sleek ivory suit. She carried herself with the grace and confidence that had made her one of the most admired women in the world. The audience gasped. Some clapped hesitantly, while others exchanged puzzled looks. Michelle's unexpected appearance caught everyone off guard, including Alex. For a split second, he seemed surprised, but he quickly masked it with his usual polished smirk. "Wow," Alex said, standing up to greet her. "Michelle Obama, everyone." The crowd erupted into applause, this time louder and more enthusiastic. Michelle smiled warmly and shook Alex's hand before sitting down. "Thank you for having me," she said, her voice calm, deliberate, and instantly commanding attention. Alex gestured to the audience, still buzzing with excitement. "I think they're as surprised as I am to see you here." Michelle's smile widened slightly. "Well, I thought it was time for a good conversation." The stage was set. The audience didn't know it yet, but they were about to witness one of the most unforgettable interviews in talk show history. The interview started off light. Alex asked Michelle about her life after the White House, and she answered with ease. She talked about focusing on her daughters, her memoir Becoming, and her initiatives to promote health, education, and equality. "I've been spending a lot of time on what matters most, family and the causes I care about," Michelle said. The audience listened intently. Michelle's words had a natural warmth that drew people in. Alex nodded, but his trademark glimmer of mischief was beginning to show. He leaned back in his chair, crossing one leg over the other. "That all sounds wonderful," he said, "but let's talk about something a bit more controversial." Michelle's expression didn't waver. She sat poised, her hands resting gently on her lap as Alex continued. "During your time as First Lady, there were moments when critics said you stayed too quiet about big political issues. They wanted you to speak out more. How do you respond to that?" The room seemed to hold its breath. Everyone turned their attention to Michelle, waiting to see how she would handle the pointed question. Michelle met Alex's gaze without hesitation. "I believe in focusing on what I can control," she said. "Words are powerful, but actions are what create real change. I've always tried to use my platform to uplift others and build a better future, not to add to the noise." Her voice was calm, but firm. Her words measured and intentional. The audience nodded, impressed by her composure. Alex wasn't satisfied, though. He leaned forward slightly, his tone turning sharper. "But don't you think there are times when silence can be misunderstood? When staying quiet can seem like you're avoiding taking a stand?" Michelle tilted her head, a faint smile on her lips. "I don't believe in shouting just to be heard," she said. "I believe in doing the work that needs to be done, even if it doesn't make headlines. My focus has always been on making an impact that lasts." The audience murmured in agreement, and even Alex seemed momentarily disarmed by her response. But the interview was far from over, and Alex had no intention of letting the conversation end there. Alex shifted gears. "Let's talk about something more personal," he said, his tone carrying a hint of challenge. "Your marriage to Barack Obama is admired by many, but being a high-profile couple must come with its challenges. How do you handle that kind of pressure?" Michelle's expression softened, but her confidence remained. "Our marriage has always been rooted in respect and partnership," she said. "We've faced challenges, just like any couple, but we've always supported each other's dreams and worked as a team. That's what keeps us strong." Alex nodded, but he wasn't done. "There must have been times, though, when the scrutiny felt overwhelming. Did you ever feel like stepping away?" the audience murmured, sensing the personal nature of the question. Michelle took a deep breath, her calm demeanor never faltering. "Of course, there were tough moments," she admitted, "but I've never regretted the choices I've made. I believe in the life I've built with Barack, and I stand by it. The challenges only make us stronger." Her answer drew a round of applause from the audience. Alex, however, was already planning his next move. "Fair enough," he said, leaning forward. "But let's talk about something the public has always wondered about. Do you ever regret staying quiet during times when people expected you to speak out?" The question hung in the air, heavy and charged. The audience waited, their eyes glued to Michelle. She smiled softly, her gaze steady. "Regret is for people who don't take responsibility for their choices," she said. "I've always stayed true to who I am and what I believe. That's what matters to me, not what others expect of me." The room erupted into applause. Alex leaned back, momentarily at a loss for words. This wasn't going the way he had planned. The studio lights seemed to burn a little brighter as the tension grew. Alex adjusted his tie, clearly feeling the heat, but he wasn't ready to give up. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his desk, his voice dropping to a lower, more serious tone. "Michelle," he began, "let's cut to the chase. You were one of the most visible first ladies in history, yet some critics say you avoided addressing real political controversies. Do you think you could have done more to push for change?" The question was direct, almost blunt, and the audience held their breath. Even those watching at home could sense the challenge. Michelle sat still for a moment, her hands resting gently on her lap. Then she lifted her chin slightly and looked straight at Alex. Her voice, when she spoke, was calm and steady. "Alex," she began, "I've learned that leadership isn't about reacting to every criticism or following the crowd. It's about staying focused on the work that matters. During my time as First Lady, I made it my mission to inspire and empower people, especially young people, to believe in their potential. That's where I chose to put my energy." Alex raised an eyebrow, sensing an opportunity to press further. "But don't you think staying silent on certain issues might have been interpreted as indifference?" Michelle's expression didn't change. "I understand that not everyone will agree with my approach," she said. "But I believe in leading by example, not by division. The work I've done, whether it's promoting healthier school lunches, advocating for girls' education, or encouraging civic engagement, speaks louder than words ever could." The audience erupted into applause, some standing to cheer. Alex glanced around, clearly realizing he was losing control of the narrative. But he wasn't ready to give up yet. He leaned in, his tone soft but probing. "Do you ever look back and wonder if there's something you would have done differently? Something you regret?" Michelle smiled faintly, her gaze unwavering. "Regret is a waste of time," she said. "I believe in learning from every experience and moving forward. I'm proud of the work I've done, proud of the example I've set for my daughters, and proud of the impact I've made. That's what matters to me." Her words were powerful, and the audience responded with another round of applause. Alex sat back, momentarily speechless. For the first time in his career, it seemed, he had met someone who couldn't be rattled. As the interview wrapped up, the cameras panned across the cheering audience. Alex thanked Michelle for coming, his tone now more respectful than confrontational. "It's been an honor speaking with you," he said, standing to shake her hand. Michelle smiled graciously. "Thank you, Alex. It's been a pleasure." The moment the cameras stopped rolling, the energy backstage shifted. Crew members whispered among themselves, marveling at Michelle's composure and eloquence. Even Alex, known for his sharp tongue, seemed unusually quiet as he watched her leave the stage. "You handled that like a pro," one of the producers whispered to Michelle as she walked backstage. Michelle laughed softly. "It's not my first tough conversation," she said. As she made her way out of the studio, reporters crowded around, shouting questions. But Michelle simply smiled and waved, refusing to engage in the frenzy. Outside, a black SUV waited to take her away. She climbed in, still poised and calm, and disappeared into the night. By the next morning, clips of the interview were trending on every social media platform. Hashtags like #MichelleGrace and #TalkShowShowdown filled Twitter and Instagram. The public reaction was split. Supporters praised Michelle's composure and intelligence, calling her a role model for grace under pressure. Critics, however, debated whether Alex had crossed a line with his questioning. News outlets dissected the interview, analyzing every word and moment. One headline read, "Michelle Obama teaches a masterclass in leadership and poise," while another asked, "Did Alex Brooks push too far?" On his next show, Alex addressed the viral moment. Sitting in his usual chair, he looked directly into the camera. "I have to say," he began, "Michelle Obama surprised me. I came prepared to challenge her, but she met every question with honesty and grace. She's a remarkable woman, and I have a lot of respect for her." His words seemed genuine, and even his critics were impressed by his willingness to acknowledge her strength. The day after the interview, it was all anyone could talk about. News channels replayed clips of Michelle Obama's composed answers and the way she handled Alex's tough questions. Social media exploded with discussions, with people from all walks of life weighing in. "She's a class act," one tweet read. "We need more leaders like Michelle Obama, calm, thoughtful, and focused on solutions, not drama." Others weren't as kind. "She dodged the real questions," someone argued on a live-stream debate. Why couldn't she admit that her approach wasn't perfect? The arguments went beyond social media. In schools, workplaces, and even coffee shops, people were discussing leadership and the balance between diplomacy and directness. "I think what she showed," a college student said during a campus debate, "is that you don't have to shout or attack to be powerful." Her strength was in her calmness. Talk show hosts and political commentators chimed in too. Some criticized Alex's approach, calling his questions overly aggressive. Others praised him for not backing down and forcing Michelle to address tough topics. But through it all, one thing was clear. Michelle Obama's interview had sparked a nationwide conversation about leadership, respect, and the power of staying true to one's values. The day after the interview, Alex Brooks found himself in the center of a media storm. The explosive conversation with Michelle Obama had already gone viral, with clips circulating on every platform imaginable. Social media was ablaze, and Alex's name trended alongside Michelle's. Many praised Michelle for her grace under fire, but just as many scrutinized Alex for his aggressive questioning. Some called him brave for tackling tough subjects, while others criticized him for stepping over a line. For Alex, this was uncharted territory. The morning after the show aired, Alex sat in his office staring at his phone. His team had been bombarding him with updates since sunrise. Producers, network executives, and PR representatives all had varying opinions about how the fallout should be handled. But one thing was clear. The interview had become one of the most talked about moments in his career. Later that evening, as the lights dimmed in the studio for another episode of his talk show, Alex addressed his audience directly. The studio was filled with an air of anticipation. Everyone wanted to hear what Alex would say about the interview that had captivated the nation. "Last night," Alex began, "we had a conversation that I think will be remembered for a long time. Michelle Obama joined us, and as you all saw, it was not an easy interview, for her or for me." He paused, his usual smirk replaced with a more serious expression. "Now I'll be honest with you. When I knew she was coming on, I told myself, this is it. This is my chance to ask the tough questions, the ones people want answers to." And I did. I pushed, maybe too far at times. The audience shifted in their seats, sensing his sincerity. "But here's the thing," Alex continued. "Michelle Obama reminded me of something important last night. Something I think we all forget sometimes. Grace and composure are not signs of weakness. They're signs of strength." He went on to recount the moment Michelle turned the tables on him with her calm, yet firm responses. "I'm a guy who likes to get to the heart of things, to challenge people. But Michelle, she didn't just respond to my questions. She taught me something in the process. She didn't let the pressure rattle her. She stayed true to who she is. And that's not easy in this line of work." Alex admitted that he had underestimated Michelle's ability to command the room without raising her voice. "I thought I was going to catch her off guard, but the truth is, she caught me off guard. She was prepared, she was thoughtful, and she was honest. Whether you agree with her or not, you can't deny that she's one of the most composed, intelligent leaders of our time." The audience applauded, some even standing. It was rare for Alex to show this kind of humility on air, and the crowd appreciated his candid reflection. By the end of the segment, Alex had managed to redeem himself in the eyes of many. He concluded with a simple yet powerful statement. "Leaders like Michelle Obama remind us that real strength isn't about who can shout the loudest. It's about who can stay calm, focused, and true to their values when it matters most." In the weeks following the interview, the conversation didn't die down. It only grew. Across the country, people were still talking about that night. News outlets dissected every moment, from Alex's pointed questions to Michelle's measured responses. Panelists on political talk shows debated whether Alex's line of questioning had been fair or if he had crossed a line. "Did Alex push too hard?" one anchor asked. "Or was it Michelle's responsibility to address those tough questions head-on?" The debate spilled into everyday conversations. In coffee shops, people discussed Michelle's grace under fire. At dinner tables, families argued over whether Alex's approach had been too aggressive. On social media, hashtags like #MichelleSpeaks and #GraceUnderFire trended for days. For Michelle, the reaction was a reminder of the weight her words carried. She hadn't intended for the interview to become a national event, but she understood why it had. People were hungry for leadership, for an example of how to navigate challenging conversations without losing one's sense of self. One op-ed in a major newspaper captured the sentiment perfectly. Titled, "The Power of Grace," it read, "Michelle Obama reminded us that true leadership isn't about overpowering your opponent. It's about staying grounded, even when the world is trying to shake you." Meanwhile, Alex's reputation also evolved. While some criticized him for being too aggressive, others applauded him for daring to ask the questions others wouldn't. His show's ratings skyrocketed, and he found himself reflecting on the impact of that night. The interview became a case study for students in journalism and communications. Professors used it to teach lessons about ethics, professionalism, and the fine line between tough questioning and overstepping boundaries. In the end, the legacy of the interview wasn't just about Michelle or Alex. It was about the broader lessons it taught. It showed the world that even in the face of pressure and provocation, it's possible to remain true to oneself. Months after the interview, the buzz had subsided, but the impact remained. It wasn't just another viral moment lost in the chaos of the 24-hour news cycle. It had carved out a space in the cultural conversation, a moment people returned to again and again for lessons in leadership, resilience, and grace. For Michelle Obama, It was a reminder of the weight her voice carried. For Alex Brooks, it was a turning point in his career, and perhaps his perspective on his craft. For the audience, it was an example of what it means to lead with dignity and authenticity. Michelle had moved on to other engagements, speaking at universities, meeting with young leaders, and continuing her work in education and health advocacy. Yet, everywhere she went, someone inevitably brought up that interview. "I was watching you the other night," one woman told her at a book signing in Chicago. "And the way you handled yourself, it gave me hope. I've been trying to keep my head high at work, but it's tough. Watching you reminded me that staying calm and being true to myself is the best way to handle it." Another young man at a town hall in Atlanta stood up to share his thoughts. "Mrs. Obama, I've always admired you, but seeing you in that interview changed my whole perspective on leadership. I'm studying to become a teacher, and sometimes I get frustrated with the system. But when I watched how you responded, it made me realize that patience and grace can be just as powerful as action." Michelle, with her characteristic humility, always brushed off the praise with a warm smile and a gentle laugh. "Thank you," she would say. But it wasn't about me. It was about showing that even in difficult moments, we all have a choice. We can react with anger, or we can respond with purpose. And I hope I did the latter. In the media, the interview continued to serve as a reference point. Editorials and opinion pieces frequently cited Michelle's calm demeanor as a model for handling adversity. One article in the New York Times titled "Leadership in the Face of Chaos" explored how Michelle's approach could be applied to broader social and political challenges. "Mrs. Obama reminded us that leadership isn't about dominance or control," the article read. "It's about creating a space where dialogue can exist, even when the questions are tough and the stakes are high. It's about staying true to your values, even when others try to undermine them." Podcasts dissected the interview for months, with hosts discussing everything from Michelle's body language to her choice of words. "Notice how she never once raised her voice," one host observed. "She stayed grounded, even when the questions became personal. That's not just poise, that's mastery." Social media continued to buzz as well. Memes of Michelle's most memorable quotes circulated widely. One particular clip of her saying, "Regret is for those who don't take responsibility for their choices," became a viral mantra for self-help enthusiasts. Even Alex Brooks found himself at the center of ongoing discussions. While some still criticized his approach, many came to respect his willingness to publicly reflect on the experience. "I didn't think I'd be the one learning the lesson that night," Alex admitted in a follow-up interview on his show. "But Michelle Obama has a way of making you look inward, whether you're ready or not." For Alex, the interview marked a turning point not just in his career, but in his personal philosophy. Known for his sharp, sometimes confrontational style, he found himself rethinking his approach to journalism. "I've always believed in asking the hard questions," he said, in a candid moment during a podcast appearance. "But what I realized that night is that it's not just about the questions, it's about the intent behind them. Am I trying to get to the truth, or am I just trying to get a reaction?" Alex began incorporating more thoughtful, measured interviews into his show. While he didn't abandon his signature style entirely, there was a noticeable shift. He listened more, he interrupted less, and when his guests responded, he gave them space to elaborate. His audience noticed the change. "Alex is still Alex," one viewer commented online, "but there's more depth now. You can tell he's grown." Producers at the network also saw the impact of the Michelle Obama interview on their ratings. The episode had become the most watched segment in the show's history, drawing millions of views both on television and online. But more importantly, it had given the show a new layer of credibility. "It wasn't just entertainment," one producer said in an interview with Variety. "It was a moment, and Alex knows he has Michelle to thank for that." In classrooms and boardrooms, The interview became a case study in leadership and communication. Business schools included it in courses on organizational behavior, using it to teach students how to handle high-pressure situations with grace. You can learn a lot from Michelle Obama's response to those tough questions, one professor said during a lecture at Stanford. She didn't avoid the questions, but she also didn't let them define her. She stayed in control of the narrative by staying in control of herself. High school students wrote essays about the interview, reflecting on what it meant to them personally. One student wrote, "Mrs. Obama showed me that it's okay to stand up for yourself without being rude or angry. You can be strong and kind at the same time." For Michelle, this was perhaps the most rewarding outcome of all. If even one young person walks away from that interview feeling empowered to handle life's challenges with grace, then it was worth it, she said during a conversation with a group of educators. Months later, as Michelle sat in her office overlooking a snowy Chicago skyline, she reflected on the experience. It wasn't the first time she'd faced tough questions, and it certainly wouldn't be the last. But there was something different about this moment. "It wasn't about me," she said quietly, flipping through letters from viewers. "It was about showing people that you don't have to compromise who you are to stand strong. You can lead with kindness, even when the world tries to make you feel small." And that, in the end, was the legacy of the interview. It wasn't just a moment in pop culture or a highlight in Michelle's career. It was a testament to the power of authenticity, the strength of composure, and the enduring impact of leading with integrity. For those who watched, it wasn't just an interview. It was a lesson, a reminder, and an inspiration. And long after the cameras stopped rolling, the message remained. True leadership is staying true to yourself, no matter how tough the questions get. I hope you liked this story. Subscribe to the channel and write your thoughts about this story in comment section. Stay safe. We will meet again. Until next story.